Dharma talk this morning is titled Seeing Ignorance. That's the question mark part. Seeing ignorance, question mark. Can we see ignorance? So the way I'm talking about ignorance this morning is along the line of what's titled or called the three poisons, or the three different ways or styles or methods or that show up that we avoid what is true, what is right in front of us: passion, aggression, and ignorance. So we can see passion. We can see when we're grasping. We can see when we're clinging to something. We can see passion. We can see it when we're attached, when we're enamored of, or in love, or we can't let go of something. We can't shake it loose. It looks like it's hanging on to us. So we have that difficulty. And the way it is taught here is don't fight with any of that. Rather, just see it. Just see that passion. Just see the grasping. Because if you try to get rid of, shake, walk away from, step away from, talk yourself out of, or you name it, you will be operating out of a partial understanding. You're only getting the understanding, the irritating part of it. You're not getting all the other hidden areas. You're ignoring those. So spend some time with passion, when grasping, fixation, some kind of artificial validation of something. Well, I'm feeling this, so it must be true. It's because you're feeling something doesn't make it true. The only thing that's true is you're feeling something. End of paragraph. And we could talk more. I could spend the whole time here talking about passion and grasping, fixation, the way in which we keep winding ourselves back and forth with our story about this and about that, why this shouldn't be, why that should be. And that is mixed with aggression and mixed with ignorance, but mainly is passion or grasping. The other one that is, of the three poisons, that is fairly obvious is the aggression. We're going after it. We're in some way, even in a subtle way, not just the outward way of attacking someone or like all-out war on someone else. It could be all-out war on yourself, which is sometimes invisible to others, but you're feeling how much self-hatred you have, or irritation, maybe it might be easier. And so we can be aware of that. Those kind of show up. If you try to work with it prematurely, I'll say it that way, based on it's difficult, I'm already feeling the discomfort of it, and work at it by way of trying to remove it, you've got a war on your hands. And it may be a subtle lower level war that only you're really feeling or working with, or only you're feeling the side effects of. Or it could be something that your neighbor, your children, someone is feeling. Resonates with them also. So the third one is ignorance. That's just looking away, ignoring, distracting oneself. It's harder to, you could say, witness that, because the very nature of it is to not witness something, is to turn away, not look at it. But it shows up all the time. The example, I was looking as we were driving in this morning, looking for an example, and I actually found the example in myself, what I was ignoring. Well, you remember when we were driving just before we got to Bailey Park, and you were saying something to me about something, and I was distracted by something I was thinking that much more important than what she was saying. And I was thinking about, and it had something to do with what we were going past. And you know how hard it is to listen to someone and then something that you'd like to think about more than what they're saying. You know what that's like? Or do you want me to explain that more? It never happened to me. So anyway, I just noticed as I do it, because I'm already looking for something I can maybe talk about a little bit. It's the kind of ignorance that comes up as a distraction. You're not deliberately. I wasn't deliberately ignoring. Actually, I was interested in what you were saying, even though I don't recall what it was now. I asked you to repeat it, didn't I? What did you say? You don't remember either.
It was about the white truck.
About the white truck that wouldn't.
It was too slow.
It was too slow. So, fascinating story she had. And it was really hard to rip myself away from her story and think about the blue house that I was thinking about, or whatever it was. It was something else. So very subtle, but it is, and you can see there's a little grasping there, and there's a little rejecting. So there's a little grasping passion, a little rejecting aggression, but there's quite a bit of just shutting down on. I mean, I kind of heard her words. I knew she was talking, and of course, at the same time, I'm looking for an example of how that works. We're doing it constantly. You can walk from your closet to the bathroom, or through the bedroom, or through the kitchen, or through any part of your house. And if you're, in particular, if you're a meditator, if you're meditating a lot, or you're working to stretch, train, build up a quality of being able to see what's happening in your life, which takes a little bit of distancing. That's what we do. We sit down and face the wall. We're distancing ourselves from our everyday activity, but we're conjoining ourselves with the activity of just watching, just observing, just see what moves. This is the way I teach it. I think that's what Sokuzan read as the meditation instruction. I listened to that. It seemed kind of long and drawn out. Was that mine, or is that just one you thought of? You're not answering that. You're ignoring what I said. So we can have, I can say more about it, but we can also have questions about this. It's a very interesting area to bring your thinking process, your awareness process, your understanding into, because the beginning of that is to notice and identify, not on the cushion so much, but a little bit maybe. If what is arising is thoughts about ignorance, then you should probably look at that. It's moving. Yes?
Do passion and aggression always arise with some kind of ignorance?
More than likely, yeah. Ignorance is the main difficulty. That's the first of the 12 links in the chain of existence. I don't want to go into those particularly, but the first one is avidya, is the Sanskrit. Marikpa is the Tibetan for what problem? The example I sometimes use, just to go into it a little bit, is that of does everyone know what a dust devil is? It's when hot and cold air get together out in the parking lot and decide to have a rumble. They come together, and I don't know the scientific description of that, but something like some kind of spinning happens there, and this seems to be what happens to the mind at some point, or the consciousness at some point. Even before it's embodied as a living organic form. And that's a kind of, there's a shutting down that happens, and then there's the next one in that line, that long line of 12 links on the chain of existence, which you can look up, comes under the 12 nidanas, Nidanas. It's all over the internet. You can look at that and you can see where that marikpa, or that avidya shutting down part, starts to cause, and there's no particular physics in there to explain it to you, but it starts to cause formations or samskaras that were some kind of things. And the example I use there, because I'm very visual, is like leaves or branches or sand or bugs or whatever are drawn up into that formations. How the consciousness works after that is, all we know is that it does that. We don't know exactly how that functions. So the part that I wanted to, I was interested in emphasizing, is that any time in your life, in your daily life, and whatever is happening to you, you can watch yourself shut down. If you're looking at your presence. Look at the part where I'm here, I'm seeing the person, I'm listening to their voice, I understand their words, I hear birds outside the window, I know there's traffic going by. I mean, you're pretty present. You feel the hardness of the dining room table on your hands. You notice that occasionally you thump your fingers, or the other person does. So you're there. There's no big celebration over that. It's very simple. But to leave that and go away into something else is practically invisible from the point of view of your consciousness, your awareness, or your wisdom mind. But it can be seen. Usually it's in retrospect. It's usually a few seconds later you realize you weren't here. Sometimes if I'm talking to people, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, because you guys talk to people, you're sitting talking to someone and everything's fine, you have eye contact, as the saying goes, and you have, maybe you're facing them and you're talking, they're talking, you're talking, they're talking, and then you see it in their eyes. They're gone. They're there because they're putting on a good show. They're present. They might even be nodding. You got that down. But they're not really listening to you. They're actually, what might have happened is something you said, because they don't know how. I'm not saying just blaming anybody or anything. Is don't know how to receive. They don't know how to really give their attention to the person that is sitting in front of them. In this case, you. They don't know how to just listen to you, give their attention to you, and receive whatever it is you're saying. And when you meet somebody who's able to do that, it's kind of startling. And it's sometimes startling in the way that you don't even want to talk about what you were just talking about. We want to talk about what's happening with you. What's different about you? James.
What if you're not interested in what they're saying?
It's not necessary to be interested in content to give everything your attention. It's from the point of view of awareness practice, somewhat beside the point. Nothing is very interesting, if you haven't noticed. Most of the things people are saying are kind of boring. So what you would be doing, you would be there, and say it's your next door neighbor, he, she, or they come over, they shut off their lawnmower, and you're standing by the fence, or you're watering your Godzillas. That's a flower, right? You're watering your Godzillas, and they're doing okay. And they come over, hey, you know what that means. Hey, it's like they want something. They want your attention. And so what do? You give it to them. You listen to them, you look at them, you turn away from the Godzillas. And you look and you say, to be polite, how are you? Good to see you, even though you don't feel that way. Good to see you. How is it going? You know you're in for it. You just opened it up. How is it going? Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you what's been happening. And then, like James is pointing out, or seems to be pointing out, well, if you're not interested, well, it's the interest part. As a practitioner, if you're in this room, you're probably somewhat interested in training your mind and in meditation practice, possibly even practicing Buddhism, or understanding the teachings go back so far. And so it's the awareness itself, not what arises. When you look at the sky, look at the sky. Don't worry too much about the clouds. You see clouds, fine, but it's the sky that's important. It's the awareness, it's the presence, your own presence, the gravity. There's so much input happening. There's so many things to give your attention to, and include what they're saying to you. You don't even have to know what the words are particularly. It's amazing, and you could check this out. It's amazing how if you just listen to the tone of the voice go up and down, you watch the body language of scratching their arm or putting their arm back or moving their rake from hand to hand. So if you just watch that and you listen to the tone of voice, don't necessarily go the other way or distract yourself or ignore what's in front of you, what's happening, but just be there. Whatever's arising is fair game. How you feel, the emotions you feel over this is, if you converted how you felt into words, it might be something like, this person is really, really irritating. I wonder how long I'm going to have to stand here and put up with this. That may happen. I'm sure you have a little bit of that happening sometimes. But if your practice is as a practitioner, as a Buddhist, and you're endeavoring to, you're tired of suffering, you're tired of seeing other people suffer, and you're dedicating yourself to this, then you might realize that it is the entirety of the situation. It's about including. The practice part is including, and there's a point, or you could call it points. Maybe there's no point, but somehow you don't have to include anymore. You're just always including. It couldn't even be said to be including. You can't include something you're not separate from. But the amazing thing is when you discover, which I hope you do, that you're not separate from anything, that it doesn't matter how you act. Now, I'm not talking about ethics here. I'm not saying that I can kill anybody. I can go on downtown and shoot somebody and I'll still be given a halo. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the control part of it is gone, and it's always situational. You're always operating out of the situation. The neighbor comes over and you're completely with them, and you're completely with your own thoughts, and you're completely with the cardinals that are in the trees chirping. You're completely with the movement of the rake going back and forth. It's the most important thing that ever happened when that rake moves from one hand to the other.
We're endeavoring to receive in a situation like with the neighbor, and maybe something they say triggers additional thoughts in our own head.
Yes.
Can we?
All thoughts are additional. If I may help you from the get-go.
Can we receive the extra without leaving the neighbor?
That's how you do it. Nothing belongs to anyone. It just looks like it does. It's an astonishing thing to think that you think your thoughts. You don't think anything. That's a trap, and it's an artificiality set up by the self-centeredness of the mind we call ego, or the seventh consciousness, or the Klesha mind. And so yes, you're there, and whatever's coming up with them, they're talking. They're either obvious confusion if they're talking in such a way that is all about them and their broken lawnmower. Then you just receive. You give it your attention. You receive. You don't necessarily come up with advice. But you look at them and you receive it. You receive everything. You receive their body language, which is not, I'm not talking about body language that you interpret as, this must mean they're doing this. I don't mean that. I just mean whatever their body's doing, end of story. No interpretation of it. So as they're talking and they're saying something and that triggers something that happens in this apparent person, then that's the same, treat that the same way you're treating the other. Just receive. The generosity is without a generator. Generoserator? Yeah, that'll be a word about 100 years from now. It's without, no one generates generosity. No one is generous. It starts that way. We start by including. We start by giving our attention. We start by slowly moving our carrying over from me over to others. And it's so subtle that no one is necessarily going to notice that you're Thich Nhat Hanh, or you're, who's that other famous guy, Dalai Lama.
Something you've talked about in the past is like transforming the three poisons, so ignorance without a self, or aggression without hatred.
That's what I'm talking about.
Could you say more about how we could continue to have the three poisons functioning in such a way where it's not in opposition to what's occurring?
So don't add to them, don't subtract from, don't add to them. Well, it must be because of this. As soon as you add to anything, you leave what you were just looking at for something else, for a cloak, for an identity, for a lid, for a description, for anything you can do to get away from what it was. So the way you do that is don't abandon it, and don't join it, and don't shut it off. More?
Could you say what ignorance without a self is?
Well, there really isn't anyone in the first place. So all ignorance is without a self. But the belief or the grasping or the warfare for something else, like the second noble truth, wanting things to be different than they are. Life is suffering, difficult, and we don't like it. We want to do something else, get away from it. get to what happiness. So it could show up lots of ways. I'm ready to go into a story if you're ready to ask the right question.
How does ignorance without a self not spin like the merry-go-round?
It may, yeah, it may still spin it. The spinning may happen, but there's no identity behind it, and it comes out of a completely unsearchable source of everything that's occurring. This is something that you could say this has occurred. You want to look at it this way because we're all here, or you could say that it's occurring because this is transforming into something else all the time. And so to try to pick out any person and trace back how they even came to be in this room. It's just, there's so many causes and conditions. You take out one part of that and they won't be here. There's lots of science fiction stories about changing the future. And what is this about? Thinking there's a future, thinking there's a past, assuming that time is true and it's linear and it's there and it's solid, it's a concrete, material, provable situation. Go ahead.
With the vow to be with all things or cause no harm, I'm wondering what role ignorance has in causing harm if we don't particularly have to get rid of the ignorance.
Mm-hmm. How does that? How does that look to you?
I'm just wondering about how to create less suffering for myself and others, but also seeing that I can still be passionate or be aggressive or ignore.
I think it comes out, this may be helpful, may not be, but I think it comes out of a powerful awareness that is not taking sides. I mean, if you understand how the ignorance works, how the passion, how the aggression works, but we're talking about ignorance today, basically. If you understand how that works, like that, just kind of turning away from something. If you understand how it works, then you also understand that there's no one who is hurt by that happening, and there's no one who gains by that not happening. There's this. Mm-hmm.
So the surface doesn't really change.
May not. This is why you can find there are great beings, Dharma teachers, who don't live up to our ideal of being a wonderful spiritual person, because karma and the circularity is impossible to. I mean, if you're born as a human being, you're pretty much in for it. I don't care if you're born the Dalai Lama.
Could you say how our being genuine helps alleviate the suffering of others?
Yes, I can. And what I mean by genuine is just be who you are. I mean, be whatever negativity is arising up for you. The best place to go maybe is to go to that part of your psyche, your personality that it's kind of irritating to you, and you would like to take that, put it in a little box, and hide it somewhere, bury it like a dog bone. You just like to get rid of that. So we keep trying, and I would say stop that. With your sitting practice, with your awareness practice, you can actually begin to, in the way Trungpa Rinpoche said, make friends with yourself. You can go into the very negativity and actually make friends with that. Have a willingness to have that be where it's at without any agenda about solving it, getting rid of it. It's always about awareness. More about that. David.
If there's an object that arises and we want to ignore it because we don't get it, what's the difference between ignoring it and excuse me, and not getting it?
I think I'm not following your question.
If it arises and we don't get it.
So give me an example. So it's a little abstract.
It's a concept out of Bill Waldron, and it's a big word. I don't get it, so I want to ignore it.
So we're talking about Bill Waldron, the Buddhist Unconscious book, studying.
Yes.
What day did we study that? Saturdays. And so what is the question about? Something in his writing, or?
Not in particular, just there seems to be a lot that comes up that is difficult
The text itself or the study or the concepts?
The concepts.
Okay, I'm following you there. Then what?
Tendencies, first, I guess, to want to ignore it, move on, and others, and then, but at the same time, sometimes,
Yeah.
what's the difference between that and just being able to not get it?
I'm not sure if I follow your differentiation there. I'm just saying, you being aware that you're shutting down on something is just, you're just aware that that's happening in some way. But then I think it seems like you're talking about you're reading something and you're not getting it, so that you're assuming that must mean you're ignoring it.
Yes.
No, you're just not very smart.
Okay, let's say body language.
Yes.
An object comes up around something somebody's doing, and
Yes.
tendency to want to ignore it versus just kind of being with it.
Okay.
What's the difference in that dynamic?
So how are you asking this? What's the difference in ignoring something and
Ignoring versus just being with what it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm following. Does anybody understand what he's asking? They can paraphrase it. Can you paraphrase it?
I don't know if I can paraphrase it, but I have a question. I don't know if it's similar, and it's when something arises for me. If I don't do anything unless I have to, I feel like I'm ignoring it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Is that what you're
surprise
asking
question.
about?
Yes.
Well, then that's your answer. Don't make it worse, please.
What's the difference between not acting and ignoring?
Not acting. You could be ignoring something without any kind of a high sign that by the way, you're ignoring this kind of thing, and not acting may be something that is happening that you perhaps should be taking care of that you're not. Is that what you're saying? I would say there. Yes, go ahead.
You often say don't hook up the vocal cords.
I do.
So in that sense of not acting on hooking up the vocal cords,
Yeah.
is there a difference between that and ignoring something that might want to be expressed?
These questions are not getting any easier.
We could ask math questions.
Huh?
We could ask math questions.
Go for it. Get the same answer. Do you understand? I'm actually doing what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
William Murray from Grand Rapids has a question.
No,
Two of them actually.
not William,
Are you ready?
I suppose.
How do we better give someone our attention? What must we do to learn?
I think that's something I can work with a little bit better. So the way you give something your attention is to not only give it to what they're saying, like Jim was asking about, not only the content a little bit, but you don't really have to concentrate on someone's content. Most people don't even know what they're talking about. Just like I asked what she was talking about earlier, and she said white truck or something. So we talk quite a bit and don't actually know this. I'm not saying I'm not doing something very similar, but as far as what William's asking about is there are other things that are happening in our human life daily, moment by moment, that are also occurring in the five sense consciousnesses: sense of touch, sense of taste, sense of smell, sense of hearing, sense of sound and seeing. Where things are coming towards us all the time in the form of those objects, and you could receive those. So when someone is talking to you about something and you want to communicate, you want to be clear about what they're saying. Don't ignore all those other things. And don't ignore those and focus. Focus, the very nature of focus is ignorance. I've given a talk on that recently. You can Google it. It won't show up. When we focus on something, we're ignoring everything else. And what we're saying here, as you listen to something, it's not so necessary to nail down, focus in on every word the person's saying and track them and so on. It's more important to receive the tone of their voice, whether their voice is going up or down. You can even think about that. That's a thought pattern about what someone is saying that is still receiving. It's receiving your own understanding of what's happening. The tone is going up and down. You could actually note that. It won't come up as a concept. It'll just come up more as like a fragrance or like a color of something. Not much to think about the color red. You actually, in order to think about the color red, you have to abandon red and go to something else. It's a very subtle form of ignoring. So you would, addressing William's question, you'd be listening to someone, and you'd also notice the color of their clothes. You wouldn't necessarily watch their hand move across the table, but if they move their hand over like this, moved it back, you would miss that. I mean, it wouldn't be something that you would give yourself credit. Well, I must be present because I'm watching their hand move. So you know you're present. You're probably not.
Are we trying to get rid of ignorance?
No, we're not. We're trying to see what that dynamic is about as much as we can. You're not going to be able to see ignorance. The very nature of it is this. But it shows up lots of different ways, very subtle. We're talking about something and then we get distracted by something else. Whoops. What is that? Just like if I'm talking to someone here, if I'm, like answering a question of, say, Jim, I'm ignoring anything that's happening over here, more or less. But if you're present and your attitude, your understanding is to endeavor to be as present as you can in any situation, including when you're all by yourself, when you're sitting on the porch swing and just looking at the trees or whatever you may be doing, just to be there and to give everything your attention. Just receive the greenness of things, receive the colors. It's a very simple situation, and in that way, you can actually give your attention to the sound of something, and you'll notice. This is the interesting part about why this talk is titled the way it is if you'll notice that when you're giving something your attention, the other ones slow down, or it's like you can't hear a clock tick until you listen to it. You're in a room and there's a clock ticking, and if someone says, "You hear the clock tick?" and well, I do now. But it's just an area that the idea here is to bring your attention to consciousness, to say that this is happening all the time. There's all kinds of things. They usually show up as gaps. Nothing. The gap isn't to necessarily be filled by anything. Just about observing how things come and go, and there are spots that we don't actually see. Just knowing that you're missing things is awareness. Yes.
When we have big gaps like that in our awareness, can we use something like halfway measures to bring more awareness into the ignorance?
I don't know if if you say you're having big gaps, I think that's probably enough that you're aware that that's happening. As far as halfway measures, I wouldn't do halfway measures, and I'll give a quick description of that. I wouldn't do halfway measures in order to get something else, to get more awareness. I would just do halfway measures just to do it, just to notice that there's something happening between this and that. That when you go from here, it's time to go get groceries. So you get up to go to the car. You could notice when you're about halfway to the car in the parking lot or wherever it is. Just stop and notice that you're halfway. Or when you reach for something, I'm not going to reach for this again. I'm clumsy. So, but when you reach for something, you're going to pick something up, like your coffee cup, or you might just stop in the middle of that. You could put it back down, or you could continue, but just something about that area of the halfway. I mean, it happens especially it seems to be true in the arts when you're doing something whether it's music or whether it's painting, drawing, sculpture, or even writing. There's something about the halfway point that seems to be important, halfway measures.
Take one more question.
One more question? Thea?
If you find yourself caught in a super negative emotional pattern,
Yes.
and like anxiety, say,
Yes.
it's like 5 round fire, fight or flight, and you notice that you just cannot settle that down, even if you sit. It's just because there's this loop of thoughts.
Might not be a time to sit, but go ahead, please.
So that's my question. My question is, because it's sort of like being tumbled by a wave. You just can't get your footing. What is there ignorance present in that situation, and how do you get your footing so you can kind of deal with it?
So the image that I've used before is don't try to learn how to ski in a snowstorm. You heard me say that, I'm sure. And that's when those things come up. If you have, in the days when don't have anxiety, take some time away to sit down and just do nothing. You don't have to call it meditation. You can just sit down, hold still, and just watch what moves. Then when the timing comes up, the triggering comes up, or the some kind of event in your daily life triggers anxiety, quite often that's anxiety that's been stuffed in the first place. It isn't the actual event. It's a little bit of it that makes you feel anxious, but it's something about that triggers unexamined anxiety, and that gets some kind of a message. It's time to express ourselves here. And so I would say that's not a time to meditate, to try to calm it down. But it is a time to be aware of it. I mean, so then you could look at it without any agenda about fixing it, stopping it. That's what makes it difficult. The agenda to stop anxiety is ignorance. It's deliberate ignorance. And that's actually an opportunity to feel deeply that anxiety. Probably won't kill you. I mean, it could, but if it does, it's probably your time to go. Follow me? I mean, you could go be by yourself. Might be easier than being with family members or something, but you could go somewhere and not necessarily sit, but you could hold still. As I said before, you could sit on the porch swing. You could go for a walk or something like that, but actually use that as an opportunity. That's a pattern in your life that is coming up for review. And as we say in this particular way of teaching, it's a Dharma gate. It's a Dharma means truth. It's a gate to the truth about who you are and what this fundamentally is. We're totally confused about who we are. We think we're human beings. That's just like we think we're a Caucasian. We think we're a man, a woman. Not exactly. That's a little bit of a description, but who you actually are is unfindable. Why? It's not separate from anything. It's not a separate being. And so this anxiety is part of what keeps the separation going. And it becomes circular. You know that. Anybody who has that kind of thing come up occasionally notice there's some kind of strange circularity about it, and yet we can't seem to find we keep coming back to the same thing. It's like a diamond ring. Exactly like a diamond ring. I never thought of that before. Except the diamond is more like a piece of bologna, something, and we go round the band, and everything's fine, everything's going good, but then we come right back to what is unexamined again. And so the idea is when it comes up, that is your opportunity, and it's harder to do, it might be impossible to do without some kind of a strong sitting practice. When that comes up again, if there's a strong sitting practice, then it's like just having a bigger sky for angry clouds. Just a bigger sky. So there's more accommodation. It's always about kindness to yourself and kindness even to the energy that I always liked. Ramana Maharshi was a great sage of the last century, Hindu sage, Indian, lived at Arunachala. And he, when he was getting ready to die, he told his students there, his friends that came, he says, well, about the cancer he had, they all wanted to do something about it. I said, oh, it wants to live too. So I had an interesting way of talking about that. We need to go to the switch gears and go into, whose dual glide is that out there? What year is that?
Actually, it says 93, so it's a
93, it's really nice. It's a kind of spaceship, I just happen to know the name of the spaceship. Thank you so much.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our yellow chant books. And I'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes we have in the hallway. Your financial support is greatly appreciated and needed.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's ways. Jio san chi shifu shison musa moko sa moko jaoromi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions of the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.